Hey, it's our weekly streaming show, and here's a sneak peek at our top streamer of the week. Go get you some Kenny Pickett, rostered in just 16% of Yahoo leagues. Pickett was the QB21 last week against the Bengals, but the Pittsburgh offense showed a glimmer of light. Eddie Faulkner's first game at the helm, Colin plays. Pickett's got a great matchup against the Cardinals, just turned back the clock on Matthew Stafford. They rank 23rd in AFPA to opposing quarterbacks, so it's a nice matchup. Pickett still has great weapons to work with. They all seem healthy for what feels like the first time all year. They're using Pat Freiermuth, so expect some continued progression from this offense up against a vulnerable defense. Now let's get to the show. Welcome, everyone, to the Most Accurate Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Brandon Niles. With me is my fantastic co-host, the great Jen Akins. Jen, how's it going, buddy?
Going well. I'm excited. Lucky week 13. Ready to do this. Streamers and stashes for, not the final time, but we're getting close. I feel like the first half of the season took forever, and then now that we're here, it's going pretty quickly. It's exciting. I like the end. It's fun. The playoffs are always fun, especially for those that are actually in position to go to the playoffs. That makes it even more fun. How are you doing? How was your holiday?
It was good. It was nice. I've got two small kids, so I wouldn't say it was a relaxing time, but it was pleasant, and I enjoyed being around them. We went and saw the new Trolls movie, which the girls liked a lot, so that worked out really, really well. I always enjoy the movies. I try to tell my kids that their dad is a big movie fan, so if they ever want to go see movies, they can exploit that. I'm very willing to do stuff like that. But I'm with you. I love this time of year. I love the playoffs, both in real football and in fantasy football. I have a blast with all of that, so I'm doing good. Welcome, everyone, to this weekly streamers show. We highlight the quarterbacks, tight ends, kickers, and team defenses you should target as streaming options for the upcoming week. As a reminder, we only discuss the streaming option if they're available in 40% or less of Yahoo leagues. So if your favorite option isn't discussed, they're probably rostered in too many leagues. I'm looking at you, Jordan Love, right now. So hello to everyone in the chat. We don't have any questions at the moment, so I'm just going to dive into these right now. I do want a little note on Kenny Pickett. He is dealing with an ankle, so if you're a little nervous about his ankle right now, then go ahead and move on to my number 2 streamer, which is Gardner Minshew for the second consecutive week. You can even talk me into Minshew over Pickett. I think this is a good week to stream quarterback. I think there's a few decent options that are available in pretty much most leagues, which is a nice relief after a few weeks of just trash out there. So Minshew worked out pretty well last week, largely because he ran in a touchdown. He was the QB 13. Otherwise, he was a little dicey. But Tennessee is 21st in AFPA to quarterbacks. Minshew's super volatile, but he's got a nice group of weapons. Michael Pittman seems to be doing well, and the Titans are just struggling, especially in the secondary. They traded away Kevin Byard a few weeks back. They're just not playing well. Like I said, you could talk me into Minshew over Pickett, but I really like the trending direction Pickett's in with the new offensive play caller and the good weapons. And then I think the Colts would like to just run this game, even though Jonathan Taylor is out. Zach Moss has shown that he can absolutely do it. And along those lines, Corey Jackson is asking if they should pick up Zach Moss this week. Yes, you should. Zach Moss could be a league winner. I think he's going to be an RB1 pretty much the rest of the way until Taylor comes back. And you never know. He's having surgery on that thumb. You never know how much time Taylor's going to miss on that. So one more quarterback, then we'll hit Will Hayes' question here. Bryce Young at Tampa Bay. I don't love this one as much as I like Pickett and Minshew, but you could tell a story where Bryce Young puts up fringe QB1 numbers this week. He's been bad, but there's this strange first week bump quarterbacks often get when they get a new play caller. So Frank Reich's out, Josh McCown's out, Deuce Staley's out. If you watch the tape on Bryce Young, he doesn't look terrible. He just looks like he doesn't have any time, and they have him doing 5 and 7 step drops the way they were doing Justin Fields his rookie year. I don't really understand why they're doing that. So maybe they'll get the ball out a little faster and he'll get to find the end zone this year. Again, Tampa Bay, 26th in AFPA, so it's a good matchup. I don't love it. He's really risky. I'd rather Minshew or Pickett, but if you're desperate, you can tell yourself a story where Bryce Young is there. Jen.
Yes.
Pittsburgh, I ask you about Pittsburgh constantly because they're just such an enigma of an offense. There's so much talent there, and there's so many players that make you just want to scream because they should, Deontay Johnson should catch all the balls all the time, and he's just up and down when he's healthy. So with the new play caller, they didn't light the world on fire last week or anything, but they did set highs in yards, and they move the ball better for the past. I think better than they have in like 3 years or something. So, what do you think of Pittsburgh for the stretch run? Are you acquiring any of the players in that offense?
I think most of them, I think, are already acquired. I don't know that.
Well, I don't mean off waivers. I meant in general. You like seeking
Oh,
them out?
well, I
Yeah.
was gonna say, well, because yeah, I mean, I'm buying in with the ones that I have. They're now more in consideration for starting. Like, for example, George Pickens, I have him on several teams, and I didn't even contemplate starting him for the last few weeks, and now I'm like, okay, now we can possibly. They had a great. They were productive for the first time in a very long time. Other than Jalen Warren, he was kind of a bummer. They didn't
It was
really.
definitely disappointing.
Yeah, I mean, he was still fine. He put up some fantasy points,
And he
but
got touches, so
he did.
Mhm.
And it's good to see Najee playing well. I
Yep.
know, I know you're a fan, and that part is good. But yes, I mean, I think we need to see a little more, but I think the outlook is a little rosier than it was a week ago for Pittsburgh. And like you said, a lot of times when they do switch play callers and you do switch things up, you do get a 1 week bump. So hopefully that's not what we saw here. But I think the way how stark the difference was in what they did without Matt Canada, I feel like that's a good thing. I don't think that's a 1 week kind of thingy. I think we might see more of that moving forward.
Excellent. Yeah, I'm interested, and they keep winning. Interestingly enough, they're like the Pittsburgh's right in the midst of the playoff win. So, Will Hayes has a lineup question: needs a quarterback and a tight end to stream this week off the wire. Has Jordan Love, Gardner Minshew, Kenny Pickett, or Derek Carr? I like Love the best because he gives you a little bit more rushing production, but you could talk me into Minshew or Pickett there. I just think Love has a little bit more upside, and he's playing pretty well right now. Everett, Higbee, Henry, or Dulcich. To me, that's Everett or Higbee, but what do you think, Jen?
For me, it's going to be Everett against New England. I don't dislike Hunter Henry, though, against the Chargers. I mean, it's a really good matchup. I don't know who they're going to have at quarterback. I don't know if they're going to go back to Mac Jones, if they're going to go with Bailey Zappi. That's always a gamble there with Henry. But I think at this stage, I'd probably just go Everett.
Okay, that makes perfect sense to me. Toby, hi Toby. Greetings and salutations. He says, which waiver wide receiver to roster rest of season in a PPR? A.T. Perry, Curtis Samuel, Jalen Hyatt, or Dontayvion Wicks? So we're looking at stash options here for you, Jen. So as it's a stash question, which one of those is the most appealing to you?
Well, 3 out of 4 of those were in my stash article that went out this morning. So I do like them all as stashes, but if I had to pick one rest of season, I might go Samuel. Well, it depends on Rashid Shaheed and Michael Thomas is on IR at least till week 16. So
Yep.
I guess it depends on Rashid Shaheed and Chris Olave. I mean, if there's nobody else there, then A.T. Perry is probably a good guy to pick up. But I think Curtis Samuel is probably your more consistent guy there out of those.
Okay, excellent. That makes sense to me. I'm interested in what Jalen Hyatt did, but I'm just not super excited. I'm with you. I think Samuel is going to be more sustainable. Like the Giants receiving core.
I mean, he popped last week, and there is we've been waiting kind of for that rookie breakout from him, and the Giants are forced to reinvent themselves again. So they may do it with him, and they're off this week. Right? They're off this week, right?
They're off this week, absolutely.
Yeah, so they've got 2 weeks to kind of integrate him back in if they want to.
Let's hear. Okay, Ray asks, would we trade Breece Hall for Sam Laporta? They have Achane, David Montgomery, and Bijan Robinson. You can do that. I'm okay. Laporta is pretty elite. I would say I want to know that you have a backup option for your flex if Achane can't get right health wise. But as long as you've got the depth, then I think you're okay. I think Montgomery and Bijan are going to be in your roster or in your lineup more often than Breece Hall. What do you think, Jen?
Yeah, Laporta is great, but he's kind of hit or miss. So I don't know. I mean, I could talk myself into that, but I could also talk myself out of it. And it depends on your other option at tight end. If you literally have no one and you're kind of riding a carousel of bad streamers, then I would probably do it. But if you have someone somewhat decent, and like Brandon said, depending on your flex, if you don't have a strong flex, then I might just stay put.
Okay, excellent. Samson asked about my hat. Jen, do you mind if I diverge into a little personal story about my hat real quick?
Absolutely not. Let me kick back. Go for it.
Yeah, so thank you for asking, Sam. So it says Surge, and it's a character from a book series written by Tim Dorsey, who's one of my favorite authors. And it's a crazy book series. I don't even know if I would recommend it. I'd say read what it's about and know that it's funny. And if that kind of humor is your thing, you'll love it. And if not, you won't. So, but I love his books. It's like there's like 25 books about this character named Surge A. Storms. He signed the hat. I learned about this. He writes about Florida, and it's almost like a historian side of Florida, like different parts of Florida, which is fun. And my buddy in the military that I met in the military got me turned on to this guy's books, and he died today. And so I
Your buddy died? Or
no, I'm sorry. Tim Dorsey, the author.
Oh.
I'm sorry. No. Sorry about that. Tim Dorsey, the author, he died today. So he's so I wore that kind of in memory. He's got one book left that I haven't read yet, but this hat, I went to a book signing with my buddy in DC, and we got there way early, and we picked up the Tim Dorsey newest book. This was like, I don't know, almost 20 years ago now. And we ran into somebody who was like, hey, great books. And it was Tim Dorsey, and he got there way early too. And before the books, he sat there and chatted with us for like 30 minutes about just the books. And it seemed like the nicest guy in the world. And then when I deployed to Iraq, I told my dad before I left about that book signing and how nice Tim Dorsey was. So my dad, being who my dad is, wrote to Tim Dorsey when I was in Iraq and said, hey, my son is in Iraq, and I just wanted to tell you that before he left, he got to meet you, and you were so nice to him, and I appreciate that. And Tim Dorsey signed this hat, sent it to my dad, told him to give it to me, signed a draft page from his most recent book and gave it to my dad, just sent that to my dad. So it was just really nice. He's just a super, super nice guy and loved the books, and sad to hear about his passing. I don't know him or anything, but couple little moments.
You spent 30 minutes with him at a book signing, pre-book signing. You know him.
Super, super nice. We spent a long time discussing who would play Surge in a movie. I always saw him as like a Michael Keaton. And Tim Dorsey always said that Christopher Walken seemed like the right guy for him. So gave you a little insight into what he was thinking. So Samson, thanks so much for asking about the hat. And Jen, thanks for humoring me as I tell my long personal story. All right, Will Hayes. Love is playing KC. You still think I should pick up Love now that the defense has been playing really good? Yeah, I just the rushing upside. If you want Minshew, that's fine though, man. Like I don't have a problem. Minshew's perfectly fine too up against Tennessee. Just been a little more volatile. So Caleb wants to know both quarterbacks are on bye next week with Kyler Murray and Sam Howell. Any potential streaming options for the following week? Options include Browning, DTR, Minshew, Young, Ritter, and Zappi. I think Minshew is the only player there that I'm super, super confident will start next week. So he's the one I would grab. And he's volatile enough that he could put up a nice big number for you. So that's what I would do if you want to get ahead of the game a little bit. So, all right. I rambled on long enough. So, Jen, it's time for me to ask you the most important question in fantasy podcast history, and that is it a good week to stream tight end?
I hate to let you down here, Brandon, but no, it's not. It's an okay week. It's not the worst week we've ever had in the history of streaming, but it is certainly not the best week in the history of streaming. We're just at the bottom of the barrel right now, especially in the streaming department, with our parameters of having them be 40% rostered or under. It just leaves you with minimal options. But I found some. So let's get to it. My first tight end option of the week is Cade Otton. Excuse me. He is playing Carolina this week. He is 29% rostered. Cade Otton has the highest snap count right now among tight ends in 2023. He's out there for pretty much every play. He's averaging 4.5 targets a game. The Panthers are 7th in tight end adjusted fantasy points allowed. So not the softest and not the most porous defense when it comes to tight ends. However, they are somewhat vulnerable. They did recently allow Dallas tight ends to drop basically 5 catches for 55 yards and a touchdown 2 weeks ago. So they're a smidge vulnerable there. So Cade Otton is my first option. He's there, right? I mean, he's on the field a lot. They look his way. So he's, like I said, not the best option, but he is an option. Second guy is Chig Okonkwo against Indy. He's 26% rostered. He hasn't been great this season. I mean, let's be real. He really hasn't. We all were kind of excited about him heading in thought, okay, with the limited pass catching options in Tennessee, even with Hopkins. So anyway, he broke a slump this week. He had 4 catches for 45 yards. So, the Colts are 28th in adjusted fantasy points allowed. They're allowing 12.0 half PPR points each week to a tight end. So he's an option. Hopefully they look to him this week against the Colts because, like I said, they are in the bottom of the league against the tight end. Third guy I have is Tyler Conklin. He's playing at home against Atlanta. He is 16% rostered. He's been a nice little safety valve for whoever the quarterback is, right? Whether it's Wilson or Boyle. He had 5 targets last week, which were third after Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall. So, I mean, he's in the mix. Falcons are allowing 10.7 adjusted fantasy points allowed to a tight end per week. The good news with Conklin, he has a good game this week, and then he plays Houston, Miami, and Washington, who rank 29th, 17th, and 23rd against the tight end. So you can grab Conklin this week and just ride him out through the playoffs if you're in that streaming world and don't feel like doing that anymore. And then I actually have a bonus tight end this week.
Excellent.
I don't usually go with a bonus tight end, but I wanted to throw it out there. Juwan Johnson against Detroit. He is only 9% rostered. Like we talked about earlier, all their wide receivers are hurt. So he had 7 targets last week once all their wide receivers were hurt. So we don't know exactly who's going to come back, whether Olave, Shaheed, whatever. But if they're down a couple bodies, Juwan Johnson might be a guy that kind of steps up there.
Excellent. Your old friend, Juwan Johnson.
Yeah.
I always think of you when I think of Juwan Johnson.
So. Yeah, I've been a fan, but he, unfortunately, I thought this season would be the year because Adam Troutman was gone. And I mean, Taysom Hill is always there as kind of an annoying little
Careful.
I know.
Our producer, Sal.
I know.
Sal, we didn't mean it. We didn't mean
as it was
to use
coming
the word
out of
annoying.
my mouth. Yeah. I was like, Sal's going to somehow cut me out of this podcast all of a sudden. Technical diff. I'm going to have that little screen. Technical diff.
Yeah, he's got the music in the background. That's how it works.
All right. Anyway, I do like Juwan Johnson. I like him this week. It's like I said, especially if they're down some pass catchers. Someone's got to catch the ball there, or at least attempt to.
All those guys with good touchdown potential, too. I like those options, Jen. Thank you very much for that. McBucket's production asks if they should trade Devon Achane and Christian Kirk for Justin Jefferson in a full PPR. Looks like they have CMC, Gibbs, and Keaton Mitchell, and they have Chris Olave, Nico Collins, Drake London, Hollywood Brown. I think you gotta swing. I would make that swing. What do you think, Jen?
Yeah, I wonder if that's Keaton Mitchell or Elijah, but I guess it doesn't really matter. But
I assumed. I guess
don't know.
Yeah. If it's CMC insurance, then that's fine too.
Yeah, I don't know. It could be either one. But I mean, I don't think I think that with you having, let's see, you have Olave, Collins, London, Hollywood. I mean, I don't think that Kirk. Yeah, I don't think you're going to miss Kirk that much. He's kind of right in the mix there in the middle. So yeah, why not? Go for it.
Oh, he wrote.
Both of them.
I missed that. Mitchell times 2. Both Mitchells. Yeah, even better.
Yeah, so. We both did not get that.
Excellent. Thank you, McBuckets. All right, Jen. The other most important question I have to ask you this week is it a good week to stream kicker?
It's not bad. Kicker's okay. Not the best. We are, as we all know, there's a lot of teams on buys this week. There's 6 teams. 3 of them are starting kickers. So a lot of you out there are going to have to replace Justin Tucker, Tyler Bass, Daniel Carlson. So yeah.
I lost you, Jen. Not sure if everyone can still hear me. But we'll get back to kickers. I'm going to answer Stephen Smith's question real quick. Do we think Demario Douglas will play? I think he's supposed to play. I would have a backup plan in place. That said, I don't know how excited we are about Demario Douglas coming off that situation and, facing down the gun barrel of Bailey Zappi. So I don't know. I would call him kind of a low end wide receiver 3, especially, a little bump in PPR, I guess, in general. But as long as you've got a backup option in place, I think it sounds like he might play.
Am I back?
Jen, you're back. There we go.
I was not muted. My mic came unplugged on the side.
Sure, that makes sense.
So yeah.
Okay,
right, I'm back.
Let's get back to kickers.
Back to kickers. Everyone's favorite. I'm sure you all were on the edge of your seats waiting for me to come back to talk kicker. So yeah, first guy I have is a repeat from last week, Jake Moody. He was my number one last week. He's going to be my number one this week. Even though I will say last week, my bonus was Blake Groupie, who ended up being the number one kicker on the week. And he was my bonus. But anyway, so yeah, Jake Moody on the road against the Eagles. He is still 35% rostered, so he still counts here in the streaming category. San Francisco, they're a field goal favorite on the road, and they have their team implied total is 25 points. So he's the best option out there. If Chris Allen in the chat, our old friend who used to be on this show with us, love it. All right, sorry. Let's move on. My second option is Matt Amendola. I did have /other, but right before the podcast, saw word that they re-signed him to the practice squad because they tried out Brett Maher and some other guy that I can't remember the name of right now. So it was kind of a iffy, like we still didn't know who was going to be the kicker, but it looks like it is going to be Matt Amendola. He is 9% rostered. Houston is playing at home against Denver. They are 3.5 point favorites with a 25.5 implied team total. So he's my number 2 guy there. Number 3 guy is Chris Boswell. We talked about the Steelers a little while ago, ramping up a little bit. So we're going to ramp up the kicker. He's at home against Arizona. He is 17% rostered, and they are 5.5 point favorites over the Cardinals with a 23.75 implied team total. So he's my third guy. And then, of course, I have a bonus. Usually my bonus is like a super low rostered random, but I just couldn't decide between Boswell and Matt Gay. So Matt Gay is my bonus. He's on the road in Tennessee. He is 21% rostered. He was kicker 7 last week. So let's do it again. He's a 2-point favorite with a 22.25 implied team total.
Colts are moving the ball. Not too bad at all. Yes, our friend Chris Allen, thank you so much for watching. Great to say. Asks what my beer choice is tonight. It's winter time, so I'm starting to do the winter ales, the porters. So this is a Black Butte Porter by Deschutes Brewing. Still one of my favorite porters, even though Deschutes has been around a long time. There's always new craft beer popping up. It's hard to pick a favorite, but still enjoy that Black Butte Porter. Thank you so much, Chris. Great to chat with you. Chris just beat me in a matchup in a fantasy league in a league that I hope I'm competitive in. So we'll see. Congratulations to Chris, and we miss you, buddy. Caleb Thetford has a tight end question for us. They have Trey McBride and Sam Laporta. Is Pat Freiermuth a good ad or pointless? And how would you rank the 3? McBride, Laporta, right even together. I would probably put Laporta above McBride just because he's been doing it longer, but both are really good. Freiermuth is a step down for me. And unless you're in a tight end premium league, or you start 2 tight ends, I think I would lean pointless. I just don't think it's necessary. Unless you really want to trade Laporta or McBride and then have Freiermuth as your backup. But in most 1 tight end leagues, I don't even roster 2. So, Jen, do you have a different opinion?
No, I have the exact same opinion. Pointless. I think, listen, Freiermuth is a great ad this week if you're struggling. I'm in a league, for example, where I have Kincaid as my only tight end, so I have to come up with someone this week, so I will put in a claim for him. But if you have Laporta and McBride, there's absolutely no reason to get Freiermuth.
Yeah. Roland dropped Rashee Rice for Justin Watson right before Rice's breakout game. I'm sorry, Roland. That's as Curtis Blow would say, them's the breaks, unfortunately. But yeah, fantasy football could be absolutely cruel.
Especially if you're talking Chiefs receivers.
Yep.
Like it's always going to be like that. It's roulette.
Oh, too bad. Eric was happy with the Geno Smith call last week. Thank you, Eric. Appreciate that. Would we start Geno in a super flex over Kamara or David Montgomery? I wouldn't. The Cowboys defense is vicious and the Seattle offense doesn't look great right now. I think Montgomery's the safest play there in a PPR. You can talk me into Kamara. What do you think, Jen?
I agree. I usually prefer a quarterback in a super flex, but it depends on your other options, but if you're talking Kamara or Montgomery, I would lean that route over Smith.
Yeah, really, really good options there. Kind of a plethora of choices for you, Eric. A good problem to have. All right, so before we get into defensive streamers, I want to take a minute to talk about Prize Picks. Prize Picks is daily fantasy sports made easy. Go to prizepicks.com/accurate and use code accurate for a first deposit match up to $100. For week 13, I'm eyeing George Pickens against Arizona. We talked about that Pittsburgh offense a little bit. I think he'll get more than 45.5 yards with a new offense. Soft matchup ahead of him. I also like Brandon Aubrey to get more than 1.5 field goals at home on Thursday night against the Seahawks. Dallas scores a lot, so Brandon Aubrey not always getting the field goal opportunities, but he's eclipsed that number 7 times this year, and the Dallas offense is really clicking. So those are the 2 that I like this week. Don't forget to go to prizepicks.com/accurate. Use code accurate for a first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks is daily fantasy sports made easy. So, back to streaming. I want to talk defenses now. Let me bring up my notes. And it's a great week to stream defense. There's actually lots of really good options out there. So, we've talked about some of these matchups already, but I'm going to kick it off with the defense that I pick every week when I can, and that's the Jaguars. Rostered in just 33% of the leagues, going up against Yosemite Jake Browning and the Cincinnati Bengals. So, Jags are playing at home. They were the defense special teams 18 against Houston last week, and Houston's not a very good matchup. So 4 sacks last week, hoping that pressure will continue. The Jags weren't always getting after the quarterback early in the season, but it looks like Travon Walker and Josh Allen are both clicking. Browning had a pick and a fumble last week. The Bengals don't look good without Joe Burrow, and the Jags are still tied for 4th in turnovers forced this season. So I like the Jags. I think it's a great option. You can grab them and probably keep playing them for a while. If the Jags are not available in your league, there's a lot of really good, decent defenses with great matchups. Atlanta at the Jets is really tempting. Atlanta's not a bad defense. They were the defense special teams 8 last week against the Saints. The Jets are 31st in AFPA to opposing defense special teams. The Jets are also tied for 27th in turnovers. They're 30th in points scored. They're awful. They're looking at Tim Boyle right now. Sounds like he's going to get another chance to start. So I like Atlanta. I think it's very worth streaming the Atlanta defense this week. And then I like Colts at Tennessee. We talked about the struggles of Tennessee. We talked about how much we kind of like the Colts. Colts were the defense special teams 11 last week against the Bucs, which are a better offense. Colts are 11th in turnovers forced. They're tied for 3rd in interceptions. Titans are 27th in points scored, 19th in AFPA to opposing defense special teams. Really struggling on the offensive side of the ball. So I like that Colts defense. And I've got a bonus defense.
Ooh, love it.
So we talked about Bryce Young and the upside he has, but ultimately betting against that offense is still a good option. And so the Tampa Bay Bucs, they're going up against Carolina. They're 29th in AFPA, 29th in points scored. Carolina is a really good matchup for a defense, and Tampa Bay, they at least have some opportunistic players on that defense. So expect some turnovers and probably a low scoring affair by the Panthers ultimately. So that's my bonus. Tampa Bay defense. They haven't been playing great lately, but it's my bonus defense for the week.
I like it.
Excellent. All right, let's just dive right into your secret stashes, Jen. Who should we be looking at for next week and beyond?
Okay, so I brought 3 stashes with me this week. First one is for week 14, and that is Khalil Shakir. He is 17% rostered, so he's off this week. But the next 3 contests have legitimate shootout potential, right? They're playing the Chiefs, the Cowboys, and the Chargers. In the slot there, he might get a lot of work. So, when there's a shootout happening, possible, yeah. So I like Khalil Shakir. It's tough there, right? You don't know. After Diggs, it's always kind of okay, are we looking at is it a Gabe Davis week? Is it a Khalil Shakir week? Is it a Kincaid week? But I feel like, the next 3 weeks have the potential. And if you really are in need of a flex or someone to grab, he's my guy there from week 14 on. Obviously, like I said, they're off this week, so that's why he's a stash. And then as far as the rest of the season goes, second guy I actually had last week, but I'm going to throw him up here again just because maybe people didn't pick him up, and that's Josh Palmer. He's only 27% rostered. He's eligible to return this week. He had 60 yards or more in 4 of 7 contests so far, and he averaged 6.3 targets from weeks 2 through 8. So as we've said, Quentin Johnston is not the person that we wanted him to be, at least not yet. So Josh Palmer in that offense might be a sneaky guy to grab. People might forget that he's coming back from IR.
Easy to forget about him, right?
Yeah.
Because he's been gone. But yeah,
right.
I love it.
In between Johnston and Guyton, it's just not really happening. So maybe Palmer will come back. And Sorry, my cat wants the window open, of course, during this. Okay, the third guy is someone that Toby mentioned earlier, and that is Dontayvion Wicks. He is 0% rostered right now. So he was out last week with a concussion, but he's kind of coming on, right? He had 10 catches for 191 yards on 12 targets in weeks 9 through 11. He does have a tough game this week against Kansas City. So he gets the Giants and Tampa Bay after that, who are 24th and 29th in adjusted fantasy points allowed to wide receivers. So if you're desperate, you need a random guy that you might be able to flex in there. Dontayvion Wicks. He's free in every single Yahoo league at the moment.
Excellent. I love it, Jen. Those Green Bay pass catchers, like one of those guys is going to like keep popping and emerging and all that. And Wicks has looked good when he's gotten opportunities. I love it. Toby wants to know what we think about rostering 2 defenses if you're able to. If you've got the roster space, I don't mind that at all. I've got the Jags and Philly in one of my leagues right now that I'm just jockeying based on matchups.
Yeah,
I think this is the time of year to do it.
I was just going to say the literally exact same phrase. Oh. This is the time of year where I usually grab a second and plus, you also don't want your opponent in the playoffs to be able to get a good defense. So, if you have
part of streaming is reducing others' ability to stream.
And I feel like, you can, if you can afford to give up that random gamble, handcuff stash that you have in favor of a second D, then now is the time.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a good idea. Lindorphins wants to know Logan Thomas and Kyle Pitts. They keep trying to choose between should they cut bait with one of them for Juwan Johnson and a half PPR. So Jen, tight end question: would you cut one for Johnson, and which one would you start this week? I guess.
I mean, I personally would have cut Pitts a long time ago, but that's just me. You know me. I'm not a. I don't do the Kyle Pitts thing. So I would have cut him a long time ago. And Logan Thomas was actually in my dead weight this morning as well. So I think he's droppable. I don't know if Juwan Johnson is your solution there, where it's kind of like I say, you're shuffling chairs on the Titanic or whatever the expression is there. But yeah, I mean, for this week, I would start Juwan Johnson against Detroit over those guys. And then I don't know. The rest of season, let me take a quick gander here. Who
would you rather cut, Logan Thomas or Kyle Pitts?
I get in my unbiased opinion, I guess it would be Logan Thomas. I mean, Kyle Pitts has potential clearly, but it's just not happening. So I guess I would cut Logan Thomas if I was not being biased. But if it was me and it was my team, I'd probably cut Pitts because I can't deal with the mental anguish of that. But yeah, I don't hate Juwan Johnson. Honestly, like you said, if you're stumbling and bumbling and you're over it, then just sometimes it's get a fresh outlook, get a fresh body in there, like Juwanson. Hey, that's not a bad, maybe that's
not bad. Not a bad nickname. I like it.
Ooh, okay.
Hello, Mr. Scavers. Thank you for joining us. Neek wants to know if we would trade Raheem Mostert and Puka Nacua for Calvin Ridley based on Puka's closing schedule and Mostert perhaps losing touches. I can kind of go either way on this, Jen. This is a tough one for me because Calvin Ridley has been really good for a couple weeks, but he also is super inconsistent and difficult to trust. So where do you stand on that trade?
It's tough because if a chain comes back, then Mostert is more expendable. But if he actually doesn't, then I would probably maybe hang on to those two. I don't know if you're giving up too much for Ridley. Like you said, he's pretty inconsistent.
Yeah. For me, the leagues I have him in, he's a nightmare like lineup decision for me. Like every week I'm going, do I start Ridley? Do I not? Like it's tough for me. So I'm a little biased.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have him, so it's not a personal, like, I just don't, yeah, like you said, he's one of those guys, but honestly, all three of those guys are kind of the do I start him, do I not at this point, so, like Neek says, the Rams have a tough schedule coming up defensively, so, I don't know, that's a tough one.
I think ultimately I'd probably hold on to Mostert just because regardless of how many times we count him out, he just seems to produce. So I'd probably.
Right. I mean, Wilson is getting more touches though, but
it's true.
But Mostert will ramble. He'll end up in the end zone, and then you'll be frustrated. So yeah.
Roland wants to know if they should start Taysom Hill or Pat Freiermuth in a half PPR. I like both those options, honestly, but I'd go with Freiermuth. What do you think?
I may go Hill. I don't know. Arizona is surprisingly pretty stout against tight ends.
Yeah, they got those athletic linebackers.
Yeah, they're 5th against the tight end, and the Saints are down some pass catchers, so I might go Hill there.
Okay, I like that. That works fine for me. Crew 7, start 2.5 PPR. Tank Dell, Jalen Waddle, Devontae Smith. So which one sits out of that group? To me, that's Devontae. I love all of them. I don't want to sit any of them, and you can talk me into any of them, but I'd probably sit Devontae because Dell's been so good and explosive lately, and Waddle plays Washington. So
I was just gonna say, sorry. Yeah, for me it's Smith as well. Sorry.
That's all right. Yeet Man, which is a great name, Yeet Man, wants to know Achane and T. Higgins for Travis Etienne. I'm guessing that's a trade request. If you're getting Etienne, then I like it. I think I think T. Higgins is tough to trust right now, and
yes,
and Etienne's really good. So, so that's the way I like it. And I think that's it for the questions. Jen, do you have any final thoughts before we go this week?
No, I don't think so. We're good. I think. I'm excited about this week. I mean, we're 2 weeks away from, well, depending on your league, but we're 2 weeks away from the playoffs. So hopefully everyone can survive these next 2 buys. This is a really difficult stretch for buys, and I think as we were talking about before the show started, I didn't plan properly for this week 13. I sit here and I preach it all the time, and then I got myself in a nice little hole in one league that I don't think I'm going to be able to fill, and I'm currently in 3rd place and still fighting for a playoff spot, and I may not get it because of buys. And I have a fantastic team. They're just I have 3 very key component men that are out this week. So prepare. Those of you, like, if you have look at week 14 now and prepare and pick up these guys this week, because they're not going to be there next week.
Absolutely. I've got an issue next week I'm going to have to address at quarterback, but I'll get there. Since 2 more questions came in,
okay.
We'll answer those real quick and then we'll get going. Jake Piazza wants to know, in a half PPR, do we expect a bounce back for Thielen, or should they flex Javonte? I'm actually going to say yes to both of those. I do think we get a bounce back from Thielen, but I also would still start Javonte Williams over him anyway. I just like the way Denver's offense is going right now, and I think that Denver versus Houston, I think Javonte's going to be able to find enough room there. Would you start Thielen over Javonte, Jen, or do you prefer Williams?
I don't know. That's tough because Thielen actually has a good matchup. So I do, like you said, I do feel like we'll get a mini bounce back there. And Javonte, I'm not sure. Is he? I know he got nicked up a little bit. I don't know what his status is right now.
He's supposed to be okay. Like, I would make sure I'm monitoring that status, but but he's supposed to be okay. So
if he's okay, I don't hate starting him over Thielen. But I do like Thielen this week for a bounce back. So basically the exact same thing that you said.
Kevin M needs to open up a spot to stream quarterbacks, drop Brandon Cooks, Jaden Reed, or Elijah Mitchell. At this point, Jen talked about early, this is the time of season where I start to drop handcuffs. So like Elijah Mitchell would be the drop for me. I'm okay dropping Brandon Cooks, but Elijah Mitchell would be my drop. What do you think?
I think any of those 3 are... It's tough. We just talked about the Packers receivers, and Jaden Reed is one of those guys where he may pop off for a couple touchdowns or he may do nothing. Mm-hmm. And so I feel like he's kind of droppable also. But like you said, Elijah Mitchell, to me, he's the one with no standalone value. So CMC, knock on wood, seems to be pretty good right now as far as health goes. So I'd probably go Mitchell, but I don't hate. If you want to hang on to him, you could talk yourself into either one of those other 2 receivers to be dropped as well.
Yeah, and I'd rather drop Cooks over Reed, but Jen's completely correct. Both are droppable if you need to. Scampers has Taysom Hill at quarterback in Dynasty, 1 quarterback this week. So we're hoping for you, Scampers. Hopefully Taysom Hill will turn in a good week for you. Good luck, everyone. in your matchups this week as we gear up toward the fantasy playoffs. Thank you so much to everyone in the chat. Thank you so much for listening. We appreciate you. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast. We're here every Tuesday evening at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So come join us throughout the season live on the 4for4 YouTube channel. Discuss streamers that'll get you through your fantasy season. You can follow us on Twitter at Jenkins NFL and at 2guysbrandon. Thanks for checking us out and have a good day.